Hey everybody, okay, so I'm going to start with my haircut. And first thing that I would just like to point out is where we're sitting is that we're on a stool that does not have a back so that I can easily cut down his neck when I'm going to clean it up and I'm going to try and angle it. If you have a chair that does have a high back, one of the things that I sometimes use either a booster seat or no one has phone books anymore, but I actually have a saved old training potty thing that sits on a chair. Anyways, something to raise a kid up over the back. Yes, we said potty. And now, first thing I'm going to use on a standard haircut, we'll get to the scissors next. I'm going to always start with a machine. Remember, just like adding salt to a food, it's the same thing with cutting hair. You can always take off more afterwards, but you can never put it back on. And we're going to start with a higher number than what we think we need. And then we're happy to move down. I'm starting with a 5 because I know that I always like to use lower than that. Before I start cutting, I'm just going to point out over here is that you always see that kind of bump or ridge where it transitions from going out to going back in, that widest part of the head. We're going to try and follow that with the machine, and you'll see we're going to leave the whole top. And just follow that. And just continue the same angle with the machine as the head. So as it reaches that wide part, just follow that same angle. Okay? Don't worry if it looks long. Always mix the peyos a little bit. Always go higher, pointing in, so that you don't make a mistake and accidentally take off peyos. If a kid has peyos behind the ear, I could actually show you how to do that afterwards. We're going to continue putting it in, down, and then follow the angle of the head. In, down, and follow the angle of the head. It's fine if there's extra. You could always cut that away. Okay. I'm going to turn him around, which I don't usually do, but just to face the camera better. Yeah, the lighting is not the greatest, that's true. But hopefully you can make out what we're trying to do over here. Maybe if we could put the flashlight on at the same time. No, you can't. Okay. If anyone has questions, you can just let me know. At this point, it kind of should look like a little bit of a step. We do want it to be a little bit longer and just kind of sit wide, because we're going to come to that with the scissors. And I'm going to move on to the scissors right now. Before I do anything with cutting the top, I'm just going to show you, like I said, about if someone has peyos behind the ear, right, that would obviously look like that. The way you would do that, I always leave that for the last thing of a haircut, but this is a perfect time to show it, is you would grab the hair that would go behind the ear and just keep turning it. Keep turning it until you get a nice tight bunch. And you're going to take the comb and lightly pull away everything that's loose, and then I'll just like to use my fingers afterwards to hold it away from the peyos, and then I would bring my comb in here and then start to cut it away with the scissors. Okay, we're going to come back to that afterwards. I'm going to start with the top now, and then we'll work our way back down again. I actually don't have my spritz bottle, which I usually have. And this is a little thing that I've been doing for quite a while. It's just put the comb inside the water. Does just as good a job. We don't want it too wet where it's dripping. We just want it wet so that the scissors will not dull when it cuts. And it also grabs easier in the comb when it's a little bit wet. And I always like to go back and start first with blending in that area at the side, the transition between the top and the bottom, just as like a preliminary. And we're gonna take the comb and just run it parallel to the head, and continue with whatever it left off from the bottom. You could see how that's blending in pretty nicely over there. I'm not touching the front yet. We're going to get to that when we get to the bangs. Now, if we continued up that angle in the back, that would, of course, make it look very heavy by the time that fell. So I'm actually going to keep it more straight, in line with the same angle that I'm using at the side of the head. I'm going to continue that, which would look more like that from profile. And sometimes you'll see me cutting into the hairs like that, and that's where I think I have a pretty good transition overall with the line, but the thickness is not good in one area. So then I could do it that way. All right, we're going to turn him around in just a second and work the other side. Good job. Now, since he brushes his hair this way, that's why that's the second side that we do. And on this side where he brushes his hair too, it's not exactly the same, because if I would pick up the hair, I'm going to start messing up into the whole top of the head, and that will start to fall really flat and really choppy. So we're going to brush it down instead. And sometimes in thinner hair like this, you might even want to use the thin side of the comb to grab it better. And we'll brush down, and right at that transition line, we'll start to turn the comb bottom up with the top still touching his head, and I'll just cut like that along it. That's going to almost give it that old mushroom look. But there's a reason we're going for that. And we're going to look for that line where I want his bangs pretty much to be at the end. And continue that. And that's going to kind of be our guide. Okay. Now that I have that line more or less in place, now I'm going to do that again. I'm going to brush it down, and I'm going to grab my hand behind the comb, up like that, and then I'm going to start pulling it, and I know I can cut all of that. Now the reason I cut in small little quick chops like that is because one cut is always going to be very choppy, very heavy, and it's going to sit wrong. It's going to sit unnaturally. Also, at the crown, of course, since we have a yarmulke here, a trick that I started doing actually pretty recently is sometimes to just curl the hair here even a little bit and just chop right there. And you can see how that just will fall almost layered by itself, and then you could just go back and just touch up those few areas that didn't get caught in that. But it helps it sit not so puffy so that the yarmulke actually fits better and doesn't affect the rest of the haircut. Now I'm going to go back, and I'm going to start with, we're going to leave this as it is for right now, still a little bit heavier, not fully blend in on this side, mostly blend in on the away side. Pick up the hair right behind the bangs, okay? And now we're just gonna chop in. Keep it tall, right? You can always come back and take off more and do the haircut a few times, even if it takes a long time. You'll get it right. And just keep taking lots and lots of small cuts, not ever making it too choppy, and just let it, don't worry about the bangs right now, but we're looking at this area, how that falls, and how that's gonna sit, and you can start to see how it's gonna feather in. That's nice in that area here, but we have to keep it going towards the back. There's nothing I can do if your son doesn't sit so well. Aryeh has had a lot of practice with me. Now we're actually pretty close to being where I want to be. I might go over this a couple times, but now you can see I'll just chop into it because I have pretty much the length that I want. But maybe to give it a little bit more texture, just get a couple good chops in there, but without taking away the height that we have or the length that we have. And small little cuts, especially down, you'll almost never notice what I'm doing. It's giving texture and it's thinning it out slightly. And actually, we can continue that right here. Right here along that transition line.
AY Karsh says, thanks Aryeh for modeling like a champ. You heard that, Aryeh?
AY Karsh from Chicago. How do you do? Alright, I think we're looking pretty good right there. And now I'm going to come to the bangs. I don't really like the idea of cutting just straight down. Usually I'll also want to cut it up if that's how it's being styled. If you know it's going to fall down or that's how it gets styled, then we'll do it that way. Where's my water? We're going to re-wet that because when you cut the bangs, you want that to sit really nice and straight if you're cutting it downwards. And his is not, Aryeh's haircut is not nearly as important to cut perfectly straight because you could see he has a little texture, he has a little wave in his hair. So there is some forgiveness here. And I know that we do like it to sit right about that length, right above the eyebrows. That's a pretty nice length. Also, if you're not sure where you want to cut, I usually think that about, you know, what is that, like about 1/2 inch for a month, I think is about normal. So if you know he's gone about a month without a haircut, that's about how much you want to take off. Okay. And see, sometimes we cut backwards because the hair doesn't always fall so perfectly straight. And if I cut this way, it's going to fight with me. It's just going to follow the blade. Sometimes you want to cut in both directions because you might get hair is going both ways. Okay. Now we're going to brush it back into the hair. Make sure it falls, that all of that falls nicely how you want it. Kind of mess it up a little bit and then see how that would look naturally. And then see if there's anything else that you want to cut into it. Right here at the temple, that's that little spot here. That you'll always pick up and continue the line from the bangs. Just like that. And then you can cut once till here. And then the rest gets blended in nicely. Just go up. That little bit. Chop in a little thin out. We're going to do the same on this side. Start from here and match that line, which is above his eyebrows. So you see how I'm coming in and then I'm just going to follow his eyebrow line. Then I'm going to pick it up, same as the other side, so that it feathers back in and blends. There's no rule that you have to get it right the first time. The best trick is to always know how to correct your mistakes. Oh, you got the light on. Cool.
No, this one has a flashlight.
Okay. Just a couple more. We're going to cut into that. Give it that little once over, see if you're happy with everything. I feel like it's just sitting a little choppy here. By the way, if it ever starts to look like you're going to get a line somewhere up here, that means that you cut it too short and you're never going to make it grow back in. You're not going to be able to blend long hairs from here to here if somehow you cut it short.
AY wants to know if you could be more aggressive and speak with a Russian accent, like a Supercuts haircut.
That's great. And right afterwards, we're going to go to the pedicure section, and I'll ask you to pick a color. All right, AY. I'm pretty happy with all of that. I'm going to leave his peyos for last. And we're going to switch over to the wall peanut.
My peyos is long.
And I like the wall peanut because compared to the Oster Classic 76, which is this one, if you just zoom in right here, you can see the blades over here are much, much, much closer to the front. And you're going to get a much cleaner back, kind of like you're using a shaver. You also have a narrower area, so you have a lot more opportunity to get a good tight curve and get around the ears easier. Okay, let's turn his back towards the camera, and I'm going to have him sit up nice and straight with his back straight, shoulders back, and then you're just going to look straight down at your feet, okay? Now, always hold a comb in your hand. No matter what part you're up to, even if you're holding a machine, you always want to make sure that the hairs are still going in the way that the hair should sit, and you want to cut it at its longest. So if it was sitting normal and natural and straight, even if it's normal and natural for it to sit this way, and I cut it, you might get a couple hairs that will sit like that after the haircut and make the whole thing look wrong. So we always want to brush to the longest possible so that it keeps it straight. Now also, remember on a hairline, before I cut that hairline in, I'm just going to demonstrate. Here, sit up straight and look down again. Okay? What someone might think is the straight way to cut, oftentimes it's going to be wrong, and you're going to have to account for that in your mind when you're cutting. Is that you don't want to cut what would look straight on a comb, right? Because then when he picks his head up, it's going to be rounded down, right? Again, if I cut straight, then then he picks his head up, and that part is facing down. So that's not good. You also don't want to overcompensate, because then you end up with a really round back. You want to keep it nice and straight. So we're going to look at this, but instead of going what looks straight but actually ends up being down, we're gonna correct for that in our mind and round up slightly, which looks straight along the comb if you pull all the way back, right? But in reality is cutting up a little bit. All right, let's go. I got my length. I didn't follow any of that. You can see he has a pretty thin area here. Don't try and mess around with nature. We're gonna look here, follow a line from the shallowest part here to here. Basically do that, but don't put your comb here, because that might mess you up. We're just gonna cut right in, but don't cut too high. Just cut straight. Try as best as you can to follow the natural line of the hair. It will grow back a lot more naturally, and you'll have more time between haircuts. Sometimes we need to be aggressive with our little students here. Alright. Now, I'm holding it with 2 hands nice and tight. Keep one hand always on the head, and that's because if they flinch, adults, kids, doesn't make a difference. If they flinch, you'll feel it right here because your hand's always on it, and you'll know to pull away. The other thing I do is I always keep my hand, even the one that's holding the machine, keep one of those fingers on his head as I cut. Same reason. If he flinches, I can pull away, and I'll feel it with that finger. Now I'm going to use that free finger to hold his ear down, and I'm going to follow the natural line that his hair grows in. So I'm not cutting into his hairline. I'm cutting right outside. You can see he's moving a drop because it gets a little tickly sometimes. But I can always move fast enough because my hands are holding both his head with my fingers here and with that hand. Brush that away, and we're going to continue right here. We're going to follow that hairline, just at the hairline. I'm going to stop right here. Okay, I'm not going to like mess up all the pace and stuff. You see how once I did that line, I didn't have to figure it out from the bottom. I figured it out from the side. Look down. Okay. Don't worry about the video. Everyone's going to applaud you afterwards. Okay. Always remember to go clean up the outside area. And we'll come back to that again right at the end before we dismiss him. See, I'm just following that natural line, trying to get as close to his natural line as possible so that I don't have too much stubble there. And that will help, like I said, with it growing back in. We're going to come back and correct that. Down. There we go. See, and I see where that line is. Okay, sit out nice and straight. Look down. And then I could just round that corner like that, and then come back to that line. And that's how we round the corners, just slightly, without making it look rounded too much.
Daddy?
Yeah.
It's here.
Okay. See, at the edge, you can see it still looks a little heavy. It still looks a little long. And that's because we use a longer than usual size a little bit. But I'm going to take the comb and just lift it right at the edge. And I can give him that tapered look, which will keep it fresh and keep it with an opportunity to grow in for a little bit longer. Saving him a little bit more time between haircuts. Take a look. I said, we're going to get to the peyos last, but before I do that, I just want to show you, we're going to always open up the tape before he goes, and we're just going to clean down the neck. Look down, please. There we go. I can clean all the way down. Hurting? Look down. Look down. All the way. Now, we're just going to get the peyos for the left, for last. And since kids don't have sideburns, we can't just take the machine and make a line be all good. It does have to, we do have to be a little bit more careful to thin. So I'll feel the bone, go along it, and cut. And you might want to do that a couple times because you'll see that after you cut, it does start to curl. Now we're going to turn his head and we're going to brush it back, okay? And that's going to be able to get it all clean. And I'm going to follow it up to the curve, to that little curve around the ear. And that's going to help me clean it up really nicely so that it doesn't sit and look all messy or whatever. Just take some of that. And I didn't use the machine on this side to taper that, so I'm just doing that now. Okay, and then we can pull away a couple of the hairs that are a little higher up and just cut a few of them one at a time, just so that it blends in nicer. At some point, that needs to get thinned out again. See, we found a little thick spot, but I'm just cutting into it so that we don't have to redo the whole fade. Okay, so this side, we're going to find the bone. We're going to cut.
Someone wants to know if they have beard trimmers, can those be used around the ears and nape?
A beard trimmer definitely can, and I have done that in the beginning when I was starting to give haircuts, but you'll find that it's not as smooth as that. If you have it, it's probably going to cut a lot nicer and closer than a haircut machine, but it's still going to get caught more on hairs. It's not meant for nice, smooth work. It's meant for just kind of quick lines or whatever. Yeah. And I think we're done. Double check that line with the machine now that we finished it. There we go.
Are you like it?
Alrighty, folks. Let me know if you have any questions, and feel free to share that around. to anyone who might find this helpful. Take care, Chag Sameach, and see you soon.